Let's have a talk about war. Because there's the huge story today about missiles and Ukraine and Russia. We'll get to that in a moment. But let's have a talk about war. Not just war in modern America, war in our modern era, war historically. War is terrible for those who actually have to fight in it, obviously. War is sometimes necessary. I realize that. Sometimes nations must go to war, tribes must go to war. I get that. But for our purposes, this is really, really important for everyone to understand. War is a gigantic money-making venture. There is huge amounts of money in war. And again, this is not a modern phenomenon. This is not our military-industrial complex here in America. I mean, yeah, we have one of those. We can discuss that at length. But historically, you can go back Roman times, pre-Roman times. War costs huge amounts of money. Again, if you were in the Assyrian times and you were an Assyrian king and you wanted to go to war, it would involve the exchange of large amounts of currency. You have all these troops. You have to equip them. Where are you going to buy the shields from, the swords? Who's going to design it? You have to feed them. You have to get them to and fro. Back then, it would have been something like horses. Who's going to procure the horses? How much does that cost? Do you go foreign? Do you go domestic? Do you go massive quantities of money change hands whenever there is conflict somewhere? Large conflict involving masses of men moving to and fro, feeding, fighting, everything. War involves the massive exchange of money. This is going to come back to current era, so just stay with me. So in the modern era, let's discuss this because this is critically important for what the Biden administration is doing now and what's happening on the global stage. In the modern era here in the United States of America, we have what President Eisenhower once called the military-industrial complex. Again, not new to America, but this is what we have here. We have a huge military. It's enormous. As soon as the United States of America decided that we were going to be all over the globe, our military grew right along with that. A lot of this is post-Korea, post-war in the Korea type thing. So our military grew. Remember, everything else aside, that was not America's foreign policy for most of our history. Until about World War I, and even then, really, America's foreign policy, both parties, this wasn't one party this, one party that, but America's foreign policy was not my business. Not my business, not my problem. That was always America's foreign policy. And then we changed that. We decided we were going to be everywhere, so our military grew. Well, with a huge military, you also need a huge defense industry, multiple defense contractors. We could go through a million of them if you would like, Raytheon, Boeing, all these companies, huge companies, that get huge contracts from the government. And so if you're Raytheon, we'll just make it about them for now, but it could be about any of them. If you're Raytheon, you apply for and get, through a variety of means, a $100 billion contract from the Pentagon. And now you have to design and create this weapon system, and the Pentagon is going to pay you. But wait, there's more. There's a benefit in the military side of it as well. You see, in this modern area where our military is completely upside down and disastrous, generals' kids, admirals' kids, for the most part, they don't die in combat. Oh, I realize the John Kellys of the world lost a son in Semper Fi, and God rest his soul. It happens, but it's very, very rare. Today, if you're a commander, you will never really see danger, and neither will anyone in your family. And these generals and admirals, they also benefit from having a war going at all times, because that's how you get your stripes. That's how you get those ribbons and medals. That's how you get promoted. So they want war without end. And especially when they don't have to die. It works out great for them. You see, this is working out great for everyone. It works out great for the defense contractors. It works out great for the commanders who won't die and won't risk anyone dying. But then let's go to the politicians. This is Democrat and Republican, keep in mind. The politicians, it works out so well because these defense contractors who want this exact same system put into place without end, They understand they need Washington, D.C. Specifically, they need Congress to keep signing off on these huge defense bills, another trillion here, another trillion there, another trillion there, just keep shoveling the taxpayer money out the door. And in return, the defense contractors write huge checks to these politicians so they can continue to get reelected. A huge circle: defense contractor, military politician, defense contractor, military politician without end. And so when you think about war, maybe you've experienced it. Maybe you have someone in your life who has experienced it. You know it's horrible. Even when it's necessary, it's horrible, awful. The way it shatters nations, families, bodies. I lost a Marine I served with over the weekend, committed suicide. It shatters minds. It's awful. But for the circle, military, politician, defense contractor, there's nothing terrible about it. It's all money and power. And so let's go over to Russia, Ukraine, because that's what's in the news today. Did you know that the Pentagon just failed an $800+ billion audit? They were audited and they could not account for $800 billion. So I brought that up not just to show the corruption and ineptitude at the Pentagon level, but the kind of money we're talking about here. How many times have you picked up the newspaper and read a story about a guy getting killed for $50 outside of a gas station? People will kill you for $50 on this planet. What will people do for $800 billion? Now, again, back to Russia, Ukraine. Pentagon fails a budget. Donald Trump was just elected president. Donald Trump has signaled several times to everybody, that he intends to wrap this up. He said this war is horrible. Ukrainians are dying in freaking droves. Russians are dying in droves. There's all this death. We have to stop this. Now pause for a moment and think about everything I just said about the military and war and defense contractors in that circle. How many people, how many entities are highly, highly, highly invested in this Russia-Ukraine slaughterhouse going on forever? They're not dying. Their sons aren't dying. I don't care about some dead Ukrainians or some Russians. This is money, baby. It's power. They need it to go on forever. And then even once it finally wraps up, once enough people are dead, then they'll make even more money rebuilding Ukraine. This is how it works. It's all money and power to these people. It's not lives. It's not about territory. Now, there's something about fighting proxy wars, which we've been fighting. There's always an understanding. The big powers, they prop up these little powers to fight each other, but the big powers have always understood there are lines you absolutely positively cannot cross. Otherwise, this proxy war might become something that's not so proxy. You understand what I mean? And one of those big lines is you don't launch attacks into their territory. Totally different when you're trying to stop an attack on someone else's territory. You start letting bombs and missiles drop inside someone's border, now this proxy war is about to change. In fact, I would like to point you to President Joe Biden, who basically said the same thing.
The idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with American pilots and American crews, just understand, and don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say, that's called World War III, okay? Let's get it straight here, guys.
Today, it was announced that we are allowing Ukraine to fire long-range missiles we provided them inside Russia, inside the borders of Russia. Why in the world would they take such a dangerous, frightening, drastic step at this hour? It's November 18th. You just lost the election. Why would you be doing such a thing? Well, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that the evil, this is demonically evil, because do keep in mind, young men and now women are dying in droves in Ukraine. Russian and Ukrainians, families wiped out. It's freaking awful. Evil, demonic people who run Western governments. Let's talk specifically about ours. They want the cash machine to stay on. They want the money to keep flowing. and they're willing to risk your son and your daughter. That's what World War III is. World War III is your son dying, your daughter dying. The people who run this country are perfectly happy killing your children if it means more money. That is a scary situation. So bow your head and pray tonight. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I am right. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're gonna start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.